You're watching Personal Finance with Coach Kelvin. Let's get into the video. Hey guys, Coach Kelvin here. Now today I want to talk to you about why it's very important to have some sort of emergency fund and invest your money. So when we just sit on cash and we don't have any money invested, the purchasing power of our cash deteriorates over time. Basically, this is what happens with inflation. So as the government takes on more debt in order to produce the amount of money that's going into the economy, there is more money available, meaning that you need to use more money to purchase the same basket of goods. And this is the cost price index. So if we're always sitting on our cash, what the dollar can buy today is going to be a lot more than what the dollar can buy in 5 years, in 10 years, etc. So it's very important to try and beat the returns of your cash by investing it. We can do this through cryptocurrency, property. We can do this through shares and also peer-to-peer lending, also using high interest savings accounts. High interest savings accounts may not necessarily beat inflation, but at least you earn some return on your cash. So when our money can earn us money, this will compound year over year, and you're basically going to take whatever it earned in the first year, add it to the total pool, and then it's going to increase how much money you have able to earn you money the following year, and so forth. So think of it like this: your money earns you money, which earns you money, which earns you money. Now, I myself have had to realize sort of how important that is this week. I've come into some sort of trouble. I won't get into it too much here, but as a result, I may not get to work at one of my jobs for a little bit, possibly a week, possibly a lot longer. And it's quite lucky that I've been in a position where I've been putting some money aside and investing hard, because that way, if I do have to go a long period of time without one of my jobs, I can draw down some of my investments or pull from my emergency funds in order to continue living my life the way I was. Obviously, this is not an ideal scenario. You want to obviously be always earning that money and able to invest a large portion every single month, but unfortunately, we all face adversity throughout our lifetime, and this is something that I may need to investigate or go down the path of. So I like to think of your emergency fund as not necessarily always cash, but definitely have enough for the short term. After you exhaust that resource, you could then look at selling investments, pulling cash out of a mortgage through perhaps a offset account or through your cash out refinancing route. You could also potentially pull some money out of your peer-to-peer lending or sell down some crypto, depending on your asset class, your risk tolerance, etc. Now, obviously, there comes a question that needs answering, and that's which assets do you draw down or sell first? So I like to think of your emergency fund, right, as something which doesn't cost you to draw down on. So if you're sitting cash offsetting your mortgage, by pulling some of that cash out of that offset account, your interest repayments will increase on that mortgage. But this is obviously just a short-term pain until you can return back to your full-time earning capacity. When you decide to pull down some of your investments, it makes sense to pull the ones where you don't incur a capital gains obligation and then have to end up with a larger tax bill at the end of financial year. Any sort of investment which earns you interest in the form of a return on sitting your money in an account, that's not going to cost you anything to withdraw on, because your capital doesn't appreciate. It's just an income produced by the capital, okay? So it's not like you're buying units of a share which increase in value, then you sell. Your dollar is the same. Your dollar just earns you money. So it makes sense to draw down on these investments first. If you have peer-to-peer lending, you can pull some of your loans out of there. You may have to pay a fee in order to do so, but you won't have any capital gains tax obligation at the end. You'll just have an income tax on the interest portion that you've earned throughout that term of the loans being established. So it makes sense to use these first. Once you have exhausted all of your non-capital gains tax occurring investment classes, then you might look at actually pulling down out of your property or also out of your shares. Now, obviously, it's a lot quicker to sell down shares before you have to then do a cash out refinance or sell property, so it makes sense to sell some of these first. Now, you can do this in a tax advantage way also. If you need to sell shares and you have some that have underperformed or perhaps dropped in value, you could potentially sell them to incur your capital gains tax loss, still pull some money out which you can use to cover short-term expenses in the meantime, but then you're not going to have that bigger tax bill later on. If you do, however, sell one of your shares that have increased in value, whilst you get a 50% discount on the tax obligation if you hold longer than 12 months, you still do have that bill. And obviously you're only selling down these asset classes because you're short of money. So increasing that bill may not be ideal. It really makes sense to potentially speak to a financial advisor or a counselor if you're unsure, or at least run the figures yourself, figure out what your tax obligation could be on pulling down certain asset classes in order to produce that money in order to live in the event you come across some sort of adversity, whether it be a medical expense, you lose your job, you need to replace your car or something like that. Okay, so definitely have a plan going forward so that if you are faced with something like this, you already know your strategy moving forward and how you can approach it. So if you have investment properties, obviously they can come with bills of their own, but earning that rental income back off them can be a nice thing, because you know if you have to go a week, 2 weeks, a month without work, at the end of each month you're still going to get your rental income in. After you pay down your interest repayments on the mortgage, hopefully you've got some cash left over which you could also live on. So it makes sense to really have a solid plan and know exactly which levers you want to pull in which order if you are faced with some sort of adversity like this. For myself, it's looking like I'm going to be forced to have at least a week off work, but it may end up being longer in, depending on what news I get back. So I may share that with you in a later video. But I want you guys to understand that this is something that I have essentially been preparing for, because in the event that you come across something like this, you're going to already have money invested and cash in savings, just because you were going down that path of regular investing anyway. So it's not like necessarily you're planning for a medical emergency, but in planning for a financial free future, you've done that essentially. We have an emergency fund in cash essentially by reserving cash aside for any sort of emergencies that come up, or land rates on the property, water rates, that sort of thing. So this is also money I can divert to other methods or other things if I need to do so. Now I hope the last video I made on emergency funds really resonated with some people, and you've started trying to increase that sort of cash emergency fund or other investment class you can draw down on in the case you need to. Again, I'm not someone who believes you need to have a ridiculous amount of cash set aside, 6, 12 months, etc., like some do. But if you have at least sort of 1 month to 6 weeks aside in cash, and then after you've exhausted that, you have the ability to draw down other asset classes, I think that's a fairly safe forward moving way to go, especially in the event you can pick up work again within the sort of 4 to 6 weeks, or you're able to receive rental income or something. That sort of keeps pushing out that finish line as to where you may be able to pull funds back out and utilize them for your average cost of living. Now, in the event you obviously come across some sort of adversity like this, you can always tighten the belt and reduce the spending a little bit as well. If you're unable to work, it's likely you won't be driving to and from work as well, because obviously you're not working, so you won't have as much petrol bills throughout the week. You also are likely to be at home more, so you can cook your meals instead of purchasing food out. You might as well drink less coffee because you're working less, so you don't need to go out and spend money this way. So when you are working less, your cost of living can actually come down a lot, meaning that the amount of weeks you had planned to have in cash reserves or as an emergency fund, you may actually be able to extend out or draw out longer, just because you're being smarter with your expenditure week to week, month to month, year to year, etc. So in the event this happens and you're using your car less, you're cooking your meals at home, you're saving money on coffee and entertainment and all these extra purchases, we can then look at perhaps making income off what we're doing. For example, you could list your car on a peer-to-peer car lending platform such as Car Next Door, which I'll have a link in description below, a referral where we both get a $15 credit, and then you can earn income from your car while you're not using it. Now, I think this is a fantastic option because obviously if you don't need your car every day of the week, you could make it available on the calendar. Somebody can hire it and use it for that short period of time, return it when they need to, and then you get to use your car again, whilst also earning a little bit of income and lowering your cost of car ownership. So there's definitely different levers we can pull in the event you are faced with some adversity where you're perhaps forced to not work or to cut back on work. Now, I'm very lucky that I have essentially been preparing for this, and I would like to also encourage you guys to do so and have a plan in place before you are forced to come up with some sort of solution to an adversity you're faced with. Now, if you got any value from this video, please like, share, and subscribe. I look forward to sharing with you sort of how I go about overcoming this, and I really look forward to seeing you guys in the next video.